Welcome back to Linux Weekly, daily Wednesdays, where we can sit back, relax, take that midweek break, talk about some of the fun things that we found going on in the world of Linux. Open source, I'm Finstone, that is Joe Bryant, and one Pedro Mateus, and everyone at home joining us live. Yeah, holidays, we're almost done with them, or you, depends on how you look at it. You might just get started with it. But hey, we're going to make it through 2020. 2021, hopefully, I'm not going to say it couldn't get any worse because, you know, fate works, but hopefully it's going to be a lot better.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. Man. So I got a bunch of stuff going on. Normally, you want to stick around for this show, especially if you've been curious about some of the stuff going on with CentOS and CentOS Stream, because we were able to talk with Joel, Pedro and myself a little bit earlier. He's a senior solutions architect for Red Hat, and we spent
Jordan and yourself, not me.
He was in your spot, Pedro. You're replaceable.
I'm aware of that.
Aww.
And yeah, we spent about 35, 40 minutes really unpacking, you know, some mishandlings with Red Hat, but like really clearing up a lot of the just wrong misconceptions of what CentOS Stream is versus what it actually is and how they plan on rolling it out. So go check that out. I'm sure there's going to be something like, you're sold out. Trust me, Big Red Hat has not cut us a check. But outside of that, I have my pinky toes crossed because I'm coming to you on our main box here. Our Threadripper is now on Bullseye, which is Debian staging, effectively. It's not unstable. It's stable-ish, which is terrifying for me because when I run apt update, there's new packages that aren't security updates. I'm like, ooh. But I'm preparing for the future, and this is the easiest box to reimage, like oddly enough. And just to keep life fun, I have my own patched up version of OBS running with Jack, all the things. So it did good earlier today, and hopefully they'll keep that up and everything will keep on humming. How about you, Jill? You got anything new and exciting?
Just kind of waiting for the holidays to a little bit be over.
A little bit.
Yeah, so I am looking forward to being with my husband, though, for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And I hope everyone out there is having happy holidays despite everything that is going on in the world. And as Ven said, we are all certainly looking forward to the new year. That's for sure.
Except for Pedro. Wake up, Pedro.
Again, I mentioned this to Jill earlier. I probably in the minority, but I didn't really mind the lockdown. Not that I was allowed to enjoy it very much, but I didn't really mind it. That said, though, the Christmas gift that I got for myself is finally here. It's the Pine Sill. Yes. It's got the Pine logo there. And yeah, it's...
Pedro, it's USB-C. It's not going to work.
Yeah, no, it's slow. USB-C can't even push like 60 watts. I mean, you can probably read that, but that says 65 watts.
Don't accuse me of being able to read.
So, yeah, no, USB-C can't push that at all.
You know, that is a Dell, so there's a non-zero chance it might just not.
As far as power supplies go, that's like the one thing that Dell does properly.
That thing is so going to catch on fire now.
Yeah, now that I've praised it, it will.
No, it's not going to be plugged in while you're sleeping. Like, what?
Yeah, no, it doesn't even have the actual power cable attached to it. Nope. That's just a cloverleaf connector, empty right there.
The Mickey
Your first
Mouse,
thought is like, how did you get to the foot of my bed?
How did you get here?
It's going to be the most boring tech-themed horror movie in the world.
You're getting a Dell.
Right. I'm the dude who knocks. Oh,
dude, you got a Dell.
Let's start with some good news. The best desktop manager known to humanity, unparalleled, unequaled, has a new version. I might be a little bit biased, but I'm talking about Xfce 4.16. It's out after 1 year and 4 months of work. That might sound like it took a minute, but it's better than 6 years. So, a couple things in this. RIP GTK2. We Never really loved you. There's now, this is big, support for fractional scaling has been added for your displays. So if you need some big pixels and you need some not so big pixels, that's relatively easy to do. XFWM4 got some love in the areas of compositing with GLX, all that fun stuff. Alt-Tab no longer spans all of your monitors when you use it.
Nice.
I'm a little sad about that because I've gotten accustomed to it because I know I can Alt-Tab and I'm like, it's going to pop up over here too. Now, if everything works right, it's Xfce. You really shouldn't notice anything. Things are going to look like, it looks a little bit different. But at its core, it doesn't really change, and that's a good thing. I like it. And good news for people running Debian, it is currently getting ingested in Debian Unstable, and it should be on its way to Bullseye, man. So I'm happy to see that. Look at it. Look at the palette. I mean, this is like a list of things. I like the little new thing.
Pretty.
To be fair, those icons look really good. I like the flat icon themes. Okay. Yeah, I like flat icon themes, and those actually look very, very nice. That's very nice to see. But yeah, no, the improvements to XFWM for the GLX compositing, I had a chance to try the 414 GLX compositing just to see, okay, Ven said it was bad. Let's see how bad. Oh, God.
Now, this is a good feature, when you're copying files.
So Thunar now lets users pause file copy and move options and queue file transfers, which is really, really, really convenient. That will come in handy, especially when you're copying large files. And another convenient thing is the Xfce settings now includes a new tab in the About Xfce dialog listing basic system info, details like memory and CPU. So that's nice and convenient right there in the GUI.
That's what Xfce is all about. My pitch meeting for that is it's always been a desktop manager that just straight up gets out of your way. And you get a couple of nice little creature comforts, but it's about getting stuff done. I was surprised. I was mentioning you in reaction, like, the icons are pretty. I don't know stuff like that.
For the default theme, they're not using just Adwaita anymore. That theme just, it looks good.
Yeah, mine's going to be high contrast and it's as bare minimum as I don't spend time. I might be alone. I don't spend time playing with my desktop going, it looks so... I'm doing stuff if I'm on a computer.
It's mostly the color coding for me. If it's mostly flat with one predominant color, that's how I immediately identify what icon I need to go for to do what I want to do. That's why I don't like the black and white ones.
I think the only thing that I was sorely disappointed not to see was... jiggle windows. Bring that back. Give me a tick box.
Windows.
Yeah.
Even Mate has discontinued Compass, so you can't even get wobbly windows in GNOME 2 effectively.
I want to build right into the capacitor. That'll give me the...
Oh boy. That would be a little janky, I think.
and make it very well hidden. So, for reasons.
It's hidden in a dconf config somewhere.
Oh, yes. GTK4's out, though. We got rid of GTK2.
It is.
But, new hotness.
Awesome.
Yeah, the new hotness, it came out on the 16th of December, and they say that it is stable, but then, paragraphs down, they say that they will have to release a 4.0.1 to address some of the things that they missed, but it's software. It can't really walk away with everything working out of the box. But yeah, they say in the what's new, it's impossible to summarize 4 years of development in a single post. I can imagine, yes. And it is the new iteration of GTK, and if I was going to be mean, I'd say that GTK 4 looks like it will just introduce back some of the functionality that they removed when they moved from GTK 2 to GTK 3. But since this is actually a good thing that they're doing that I'd say that it's about time. I could probably say the same thing about KDE, but we're talking about GTK now.
Pedro, it's got shaders, so you can have lights behind your
does.
ducks.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
And it's got wobbly windows. wobbly
It's
pictures.
got wobbly everything. The thing here is very much that GPU support, because if what they're saying holds up and everything that they've done for GPU support holds up, that is a better GPU acceleration implementation than we have in basically any other desktop environment at this point. I'm looking at UKD. This is crap, what you're doing right now. But if GTK4 holds up, that will be very good. That will be very good indeed.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that the developers will continue to support and update GTK3, so no worries about that. But this is the official end of life of GTK 2.0, so they're just going to have one more final release, and then that's it. And they are encouraging everyone, of course, to move over to GTK 3 or 4. So that makes a lot of sense. And as usual, because it just came out, not all the libraries have been ported yet, such as WebKit and GTK SourceView, but they should be ported very soon. Very good.
Yes.
Just in time for people to really seriously consider GTK3. Like,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, GNOME 40 is going to come out in time for 4.2. So, yeah.
Well, maybe with the new shaders, we can call it GNOME 4D.
It spans through time.
Well, listen. Xfce can bring back wobbly windows. GNOME 4D brings back the cube.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're already carving out Compass, yeah, might as well.
Listen, man, we're going to get some PBR and a Xfce in a minute. It's going to be brilliant. But another blast from the past.
Yeah, this is something that really made me happy this last week. So one of my favorite classic lightweight window managers, Ice Window Manager, just got a big update, 2.0.0. And this is huge because there hasn't been much development on Ice in a long time. So I got the new version up and running and compiled, and it is very stable. And I'm enjoying the retro Crystal Blue, Helix, and Win95 themes. For those of you who've been using Linux a long time, you'll remember those are classic themes in IceWM. And it's out of all the lightweight window managers, it is one of the most themable. Everything can be themed with configuration files. I do a lot of theming as well with Window Maker and Fluxbox. But IceWM, they make it really easy. Yeah, you just have to, go to your configuration, your preferences files, and change things like the size of your fonts, or go into the
Jill,
themes
it
files.
doesn't have a GUI.
Yeah.
Oh no, it doesn't. But it's easy. It's still, yeah, that is true. To me, doing configuration theming is actually easier in gedit or netit.
Oh, I get you. Trust me, I get you. OpenBox, you have to configure everything via the RC files.
Yeah,
I don't mind that.
Yes,
the OpenBox is just the one I use if I just want something on screen. That's it.
Yeah.
If we do something like that, I have to be madly, very much deeply in love with something before I'm going to customize it. Immediately comes to mind like Enlightenment. You can really rig up Enlightenment, but something about Enlightenment gives me a constant like Tower of Cards feeling every time I'm running it. I'm like, you shouldn't be doing these things, and then it'll die for some unexplained reason. I'm like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, Ben, the Ice Window Manager actually reminds me a lot of Enlightenment. It's kind of even a lighter version of Enlightenment with all the configurability.
I think about stuff like that. I do. I was seeing on our Linux, I was reading through some of the comments on the Xfce 4.16 release, and I'm like, yeah, it's really helpful with RAM. I'm like, but my baby system has 16 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
And I mean, but that's good to see. What does anything ship with IceWM default these days?
Puppy.
Yeah.
Anti-X. You can download the IceWM
Antics,
variant. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some distros out there still using it as a default desktop and make it look pretty.
Long as I can.
The new puppy looks good.
Yeah, it's beautiful, actually. I was happy when Puppy moved away from FVWM. Remember years ago.
Well, continuing on, we have Kdenlive 20.12. It's out a bunch of stuff in this, really. What do we want to cover? So the big points. Same track transitions, that's a big point. Subtitling tool, that's nice. They have organized effects, and there's been a boost in timeline performance. And yeah, that's just like some of our big bulletin points for this one. Now, I was caught towards the end of the article, like, here's some things that are planned for the 2021s. Come on, 2021.
Awesome.
Advanced streaming tools. Audio routing. Very interesting to see that. And they hope to see improvements in hardware acceleration with GPU support, because that's something MLT developers are working on, which that is going to be very big, very big. I kind of did dug around a little bit in that. What they're currently on right now is like, you got to start somewhere. Is hardware accelerated MP4 decode for Intel. Right. Better than nothing.
At least it's there. Yes.
Right. So, focus on the positive.
Yes. Yeah. And this is something really awesome that I am very happy about. And one of my big complaints has been all these years about Kdenlive compared to, DaVinci and Premiere and Final Cut, is that finding the effects can be very tedious and they're not very well organized. So they fixed that this release. And finding video effects is easier. They are now labeled, grouped, and organized more clearly within the user interface. So it's just so much easier to find them now. And they even have a deprecated category, lets you groups together the buggy effects. And some of them will be deprecated in the future, or maybe some of them will be fixed. But it's nice that the ones that aren't working as well have a separate title.
That's good. Yeah, it has always been a little bit confusing with Kdenlive, especially we'll have like this section is like, which one of these is the effects for this? So cleaning that up is definitely a good thing. I'm happy to see that. Okay, there's a pie in everything these days, Pedro.
Yes, there is.
They even make hot sticks.
Yeah, they do. That they do. They not particularly hot, but they do get up to a hot enough temperature to melt whatever you throw at it.
No. So what is this thing designed to mildly irritate solder?
65 watts. It gets warmish. So yeah.
Do you think you could hold it?
No. With the 13 watt one, I seared my skin because I actually held it. It's like, how hot can 13 watts be? That hot. Okay.
The most severely I've ever burnt myself was at a very nice townhouse that I was still in university, but we went in and had carpet. I don't like carpet. But I had like one of those little TV tray tables. You know what I'm talking about. Everyone has one somewhere. That was my soldering station. That's soldering. Got up, headed to the ground, grabbed it.
Oh, I hope you got it right in.
Right in the hot pit.
Nope, right on the metal. And that's also when I learned that I got the thing to where when I don't have the, the K scars from burns. I don't have, which I learned all about that. I'm like, it's not incredibly uncommon, but yes, I can violently burn myself and not end up with a, but I could use that hand for a better part of a month. That was a fun time. Thought I'd share that. Yay.
But yeah, besides the hot sticks, Pine makes phones, they make tablets, they make laptops. They already had laptops before then, but the Pinebook Pro is leaps and bounds better than the original Pinebook. They also have the Pine Time up and coming. And yeah, like that picture right there shows, there's a multitude of Pine phones that you can get that come preloaded with different operating systems, or come with custom accessories and a custom
Jill,
back.
Where do we rate this? Because, dude, can we even count this as a Photoshop? Because I could tell by the flat lighting on this, that is genuinely the hands holding all the phones.
Yes, that's the hands holding all the phones in front of a green screen.
Yeah, it looks like
you can see the green being reflected off the side of the phone.
Yeah.
I think I'll give that okay, I'll give it a 7.2, but I'm going to round it up to 8 because it's a holiday season.
it's not a very good composite. Yes, Ben.
But yeah, they have this announcement that they made is basically their sum of 2020. And while it was, I think everyone can agree, a not good year for the most part, as far as Pine 64 is concerned, having everyone be at home and be a little bit bored, as it turns out, is very good for people just wanting to play with technology. And
does your Pinebook Pro have a big, giant?
No, it doesn't have a big round cross. Okay. I think that costs extra, so I didn't I didn't buy it. But yeah, there's the Pinesill. And yeah, no, for my part alone, I bought Pinebook Pro and the Pinesill, and if they keep going the way they're going with the Pine Time, their smartwatch. But yeah, if they keep going the way they're going with the Pine Time, I will absolutely be getting one of them. And they also have the Pine Cube, which is an IP camera. And they actually have the cube-like enclosure for it. There's also
good luck getting to the airport with that.
Oh,
you can't. But yeah, they also have the an unreleased bit of hardware, which they were going to be call the Hard Rock 64. And it was going to have the exact same RK3399 chipset that everything else does right now, except for the Pinesill. That one's actually a RISC-V processor in there, all open source firmware. And this one was just going to be a Raspberry Pi form factor type of thing, very similar, in fact, but with the RK3399. They decided, yeah, maybe we shouldn't. There's already a lot of Pis out there, and the 3399 isn't great when the Raspberry Pi 4 is already out, and it's that good. So they're going to put the kibosh on that particular model and release an A and B variant in the future with the new chipset. So that's good. That's very good. Jill?
Yeah, and I've been on the waiting list for the Pine Tab for quite some time, and it is, the shipments were delayed because of the pandemic. They're waiting for LCDs and digitizers, which are supposed to be showing up after the Chinese New Year. So I'm sure I'm going to get it within the next few months, maybe. So, but despite that, this, like Pedro was saying, this year has been such a good year for Pine 64. One of the big pieces of news this year is that they were invited to become ARM's strategic ecosystem partner, which is a real distinction and privilege. And not to mention all the new devices like Pedro was talking about that were released this year, such as several PinePhone Linux community editions. We had Manjaro, we had KDE Plasma, and Ubuntu Touch. So it's been an amazing year for Pine 64.
And Sailfish. I don't think they had a dedicated model for Sailfish, but you can load Sailfish.
For that one person.
The one that listens to our podcast on Sailfish.
I'm not saying that jokingly. That if long-time listeners will know, we got an email. I was like, hey, man, I can't get the podcast download on Sailfish. And like, oh. And we were able to help because you didn't allow blank user agents. And they were able to add that to the Sailfish podcast client. And nice. But I just want to say big kudos to Pine 64 because they've seemed for the most part to have overcome the most difficult thing about this, which is actually manufacturing and shipping the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
That's where most of these projects just fall on their face and they didn't. And they're getting the products out. People are getting them. And just good work all around. But could you put some
and speaking of Ubuntu Touch on the PinePhone?
No, I've never heard of it. What is it?
Oh, okay. So we have the Ubuntu Touch OTA 15 has just been released by UBports. And the big news about this release is that the UBports installer, which is actually really easy to use Ubuntu Touch graphical installer that works on Linux, Mac, and Windows. For all of you out there who aren't not running Linux, and but it has official support, official stable, and support for lots of new devices, including the Google Pixel 3a, the OnePlus 2, which I have in my collection. I actually have UB ports installed on my OnePlus 1, so now I'm looking forward to installing it on my OnePlus 2. So, and there's a Samsung Galaxy Note 4 is another one, and the Xiaomi Redmi Note 7. So lots of new devices to install UB ports on. This is awesome. The more the merrier. It's a great OS.
Ubuntu on a phone, man. They're also talking about bumping it up to 5.12 with a QT for realsies this time. With a box side and yeah, how to get OT 15 existing devices. Pretty simple, straightforward. If you got bugs, they want to know about it. Links to all this will be in the show notes, but you can head over to the UB ports on GitHub, and they got a nice little issues section. Have you played with a anyone played with
not with the actual OTA? No. Though I have been curious. I don't really have a phone that is compatible with the current software lineup. But yeah, I kind of want to see what it was that they did with the Unity desktop environment and the Mir graphical server.
Yeah.
Just because Canonical dropped that at the merest hint that they might go public, so I am curious.
I dropped that a long time ago. But hey, it's a good thing they started on it, because now you got like these options. That is one thing I know that Canonicals has gotten flack for. And I'm like, you need companies that can do moonshot projects and come up with this tech, because they may not actually end up using it themselves, but other parties might be able to develop it and do stuff with it they never originally
and find
planned.
a completely different use in which it actually makes sense. Canonical.
I'm impressed your ability to like spread your hate around, man. You're like,
snark. Yes.
Yeah. We didn't have any GNOME stories. He tried GTK, couldn't get a good grip into that.
That's it. Okay, that's my two. That's the only two I have. All right.
Couldn't get a good grip. You were left unfulfilled.
Yeah, this particular Newsweek was not. It didn't scratch that particular itch.
Aww.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, maybe this will. Coming up, I'm about to throw it to Pastvin. I think I'm going to get this right, or it's going to be a weird editing job. And myself, Jordan Svang, and we're going to be joined by, I want to get the name right, Joel. I just put Joel in there because even during the interview, and he's like, I'm not going to mess with the rest of that name, dude. Joel is the senior solutions architect at Red Hat, and he's joined us to explain exactly what CentOS Stream is going to be, what it is, and help clear up some misconceptions that we really liked, and, explain like, hey, man, maybe we got some things a little bit wrong. We'll work through it, but let's go check that out. Thanks, Sutherland, and we got a little bit of a treat, kind of out of nowhere, man. We've replaced Pedro with Joel from Red Hat, and Joel is now Jordan. Fusion! But hey, man, Joel, thanks. You had me up like 2 weeks ago, and you're like, let's talk about the CentOS stream, and like that is awesome. First of all, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning too, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks a lot for waking up and having half a coffee.
It's all good. It's all good.
And putting on headphones.
The day before Christmas.
The
day before Christmas.
Wonderful. Yeah, right. So we got a lot of questions, man. Because would it be fair to say that the internet just lost it? But that's what the internet does, right? It just lost its mind when the announcement came, and they're like, okay, if you don't know, if you're new to this, CentOS is going to be moving to CentOS Stream. So I guess maybe we should just start off with like, what is CentOS Stream versus just what CentOS was?
Yeah, so we announced streams. Well, I mean, it was sort of a decision made by both Red Hat and CentOS community a while ago now. So it was sometime last year. As you know, there's a bit of delay between CentOS 8 being released and RHEL 8 coming out. So RHEL 8's release was May 20, I want to say 18. So it's almost 2 years now. And And so there was about a 6-month delay, or was a little bit less than that. A lot of that was to do with like build pipeline assumptions inside the CentOS project. And so Red Hat had basically made a bunch of changes to the way that we were building source packages. And those were generally around security problems. So there's a massive change of the TLS support and a whole bunch of like not really Red Hat ecosystem, but like side projects that were being bundled by stuff that we push. And so we had to remove a bunch of the dev packages that included non-TLS 1.3 compatible crypto libraries and a few other bits and pieces to do with development packages that we weren't shipping because they contained basically insecure build chains. And internally we were like, okay, well, we can create a insecure build chain in a sandbox to publish a binary for product. But CentOS had to work through how they were going to do the dev packages that we weren't publishing. So that took a little bit longer. There were already a lot of problems with the way that effectively the pipeline for what ended up in CentOS made it into CentOS. And so this has been happening for a couple of years now. The main one is around security patching and fixes. And so what would happen is that at the moment, if you go to a CentOS bug tracker, or you have a support ticket that you're trying to get looked at by the community, there is this assumption that Red Hat will pick that up. But the CentOS bug tracker is completely unrelated to Red Hat, and the CentOS dev team is tiny. And so people go there, expect it to be like a Fedora upstream style distro. They file a bug. They expect 6 months later, some dev will look at it and file a package for it. But that is not how CentOS works today. What happens is you file a bug in CentOS. They look to see if there's already a fix inside of our Bugzillas that's available as a source package and do what they need to package it. Otherwise, they just wait for what we fix in RHEL for our clients inside of our bug trackers and hope that that also fixes the community bugs. So there's this massive disconnect in what people are expecting out of how the support process works around the distribution. And that's been a problem for a long time. And then the third issue is around what rate of change we can introduce into CentOS. And so with RHEL 8, we now have a 6-month cadence with the point releases. And that's fine for us because we're kind of RHEL 8, we have a kind of major release based off Fedora. So Fedora is where all of our patches go. Like where Red Hat has an upstream first kind of mission, which means when we do a security patch, we patch and make sure it gets, so if it's a kernel bug, we patch in the main line, and then that gets incorporated in Fedora, and then eventually we backport that back into the RHEL patch after we do QI and basically security hardening testing on it. And so there is this kind of upstream first. If it doesn't get accepted in upstream, sometimes we'll do things that are out of sync with that process, but generally that's how it works. If we can't get stuff accepted in upstream, it doesn't make it into product because that creates a big delta problem. And so this rate of change is fine for us to manage. It's impossible for CentOS to manage now that we're at a 6-month release cadence with point cycles. So streams really is designed to alleviate those problems. It's to bring this. So when you file a ticket in streams, Red Hat engineers are going to be able to work on that and will be working on that. The patches are made by Red Hat engineers and the community together for that stream. So there's a sliding window, right? Like it's a sliding release, but it's basically a RHEL next. It's what people thought CentOS basically was in some ways in terms of the support and in terms of the rate of change that we can introduce to it. It's not unstable. I think there's this like expectation that it's like a Fedora release. It's not. It's like a point release of the RHEL coming up. And so it's already had a boatload of engineering work go in, a boatload of selection around packages from the Fedora upstream, which is what we kind of use as our fast moving target. And then you've got basically stability. And there's already companies been using Stream for a while and it works well for them. But I know that's not everyone.
Okay, so I get that the bidirectionality here is kind of the big win in terms of moving to Stream because really, you were just waiting when you submit any sort of security issue with CentOS, you're just waiting for Red Hat to either deal with it, or maybe if it's a high enough profile thing, it gets raised by like someone who's capable of raising bugs within Red Hat. One thing that kind of took me for a bit of a loop, though, was I was reading your FAQ. You bring up security patches. So for CVEs, so it seems like you're almost going a little bit backwards with that, because you're saying you're going to take care of rel first and then you're going to backport it to streams, which I get it, right? Like you gotta take care of your paying customers. They're the ones who are funding your ability to actually patch these issues. But doesn't that sort of create the sort of like Gordian knot, Klein bottle, Mobius strip type situation, at least when it comes to streams? Because like if something needs to drastically change to get fixed in rel and then that's not reflected in streams, like is there like these are just like the situations that my engineering brain is coming up with, because I've done like OS release and whatnot. So can you talk about that, about how like what the flow of those sort of vulnerabilities are?
Sure. I mean, I guess I would point back to the model I just explained before, right? Like that's been going on since we created the Fedora project back in 2006, whenever that was. So that's not like that's a new thing. Like CVEs, generally, like I said, we try and we patch upstream first. And so for things like the L1T bug, where we can't patch upstream first because there's an embargo and we're in the kind of cloak and dagger closed door security teams working on that internally, that's where we're going to end up with an out of cadence patch to rel first, because obviously our customers pay for that. That's what they're expecting. So I get what you're saying, but it's not like it's been any different since Fedora was around. So
yeah. I don't know. To be like, it seems like it doesn't actually change much, which I guess for some people is a good thing, right? Like you can expect sort of, at the very least, you would be able to expect security patches in a more timely manner for CentOS than you could or CentOS streams than you could for vanilla plain Jane CentOS.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is this whole kind of push to this more agile cloud native world, right? And so the idea of sitting on a long-term release that was released 10 years ago, I get it. We still have heaps of clients on Rel 6, even some on Rel 5. And they pay for that pain that they've caused themselves, right? Like,
right.
And
they
that's,
pay the
that's part of our business, supporting those customers.
Well, I mean, that's going to happen when we were talking about that before you joined, about setting up, turning a computer effectively into an appliance. And that's definitely something Rel or Cent was good for. You take it, hey, it's working, it's a workstation, don't touch it, it's got some hardware on it, don't look at it wrong, and just let it run until it dies. Then we'll look at a release cycle. But that was interesting, because I thought there was just like misconceptions with what Stream is, and I think that clears up a couple things. Did that answer your question, Jordan? With
a little bit, yeah. Like I guess in terms of the CV issue, like that core Gordian knot is still there, but at least like there is better infrastructure surrounding it. So you're. I guess instability is like the next big question, because a lot of people are concerned. Hey, I just CentOS 7 is hitting EOL in like 2024, 2029, whatever the date was. I don't remember off the top of my head. We just moved everything over to CentOS 8. Now we feel like we're kind of being kicked in the no-nos, because we were expecting long-term support. But and now we're getting this rolling release or whatever. But is it fair to say, like, when you say rolling release, it's more when you do the point releases, when you do like Rel 8.1, 8.2, whatever, Streams just does away with it? It's just a continuous delivery of the patches that would be cut into those point releases? Or
yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what it is. So if you think of, I have a nice picture I can kind of show if you're interested.
Do you have a napkin you can draw on? I can.
Yeah, I can throw a screen. Yeah, I mean the main thing is that Fedora 28 was the base for Rel 8. So, as I said, we choose a release. We go, right, this is going to be our target of the next major release. And then throughout the 8 life cycle, we're basically against Fedora 28, right? Like that's kind of, in terms of like major changes that's going on, that's the API levels that we're targeting. It's the kernel version we're targeting to backport things to. And that's today what happens before Streams existed. Streams basically is an extended set of support for the community around the kernel, the APIs from that major release that's continuously delivering through the point releases of the product. So really, this doesn't really take anything away from that. It just makes it more transparent again. And I guess Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of, in terms of the support windows, I think the single biggest issue is that a lot of this goes back to a single community-made wiki change back when CentOS 8 was announced. Some very helpful person went, well, RHEL 8's got a 10-year life cycle. It's just come out. CentOS 8's just been released, so it'll have a 10-year life cycle, right? And they updated a wiki page, which then said that the end of life was going to be out to 2029, without actually checking that was the case or not. And so that sat around for a while until, we started signaling. Yeah.
Lies are just facts that haven't been repeated enough in it yet. Yeah.
And you'll believe that there's a bunch of big clients
that haven't been repeated enough yet.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the signaling timing for this messaging was terrible, right? Like, I think everyone at Red Hat knows that. The product owners have got a lot of flack. And, at this point, there's very little we can do to sort of get the goodwill back in the community. Everyone's going to say it's an IBM thing. This has nothing to do with IBM. I didn't even know this was going on. And this has nothing to do with IBM at all, but that's what people are going to see because we're now a subsidy of IBM, so they're going to go, yeah, Red Hat's just trying to get some more money.
Anything anyone doesn't like, yes, we'll blame the man. Okay, so from my perspective, I'm looking at it like when we're talking about Fedora, where's that going to stand in the mix of things? Because I've always looked at Fedora up until recently as like, this is RHEL beta. Like, yeah, okay, it's going to get based on this and it's going to work its way back. It's like a RHEL CentOS proving ground in my mind anyway. I'm actually completely wrong about that. But where is CentOS Stream going to sit in that equation now? Should I just look strictly at CentOS Stream for what's coming up next and think of Fedora as something that way down the line or the cutting edge?
Yeah, and I think that's what Fedora has been for a long time. It's always been, this is where we pull in, whatever we like from the current generation of cutting edge and innovation in the community. This is where we'll test potential architectural changes with RHEL based around a particular technology and make sure that it works and proves it in the desktop. So Fedora is, so if we look at RHEL 9, that will most likely be based on Fedora 34. And so we kind of, again, like we sort of choose a particular release of the Fedora project to sort of do a pick and choose and, curate that into the actual major releases. That's been the case for a while now. And so that doesn't change. And so from a desktop user perspective, yeah, Fedora is where you really want to be at because 6-month release cadences in desktop world is pretty normal now. You get a year or so worth of community packaging and support to and from a release. And that's all kind of most desktop users are expecting these days because they want the latest, greatest shiny, right? Correct. And that's what Fedora is going to give you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jordan. We'll take turns. I'll be nice. Sure.
Okay. It's uncharacteristically nice. I'm afraid.
Tis the season.
It's the season for anyways. So like going into that, is it going to be now more you'll do that pick and choose from Fedora and that will become CentOS streams for like RHEL 9 and then hardening work and whatnot will be done on the CentOS side and then that will output to RHEL. Is that basically the chain now? As essentially just injecting CentOS in the middle? Or
I really need to show you this picture. Yes, pretty much. Yeah, I mean,
if you can drop do you have a link to that picture?
It's in a Google Doc. Hold on, I will project it. Give me a second. I've just got to do some funky things. I need to put that into. That'll be fine. So that's pretty much what's going on. So that, if you can see it, is the picture I'm talking about. So that hopefully explains and reveals all in terms of what's going on, and that's basically what you just said.
So we're seeing Fedora 28, and branching off from that, RHEL 8.2, then 8.3, and then CentOS Stream is going to be at the very end there.
Yeah, and I mean that disclaimer. This is a forward focus, future forecasting. It may turn out Fedora 34 is a horrible base, so we don't choose to use that. But I mean that based on what's been happening cadence-wise, that looks pretty legit at the moment.
Okay.
Yep. So that about tracks. One thing that gets brought up in a couple of the articles that I think maybe is worrying a bunch of people is when they think, or specifically kernel gets mentioned, and I know for a lot of like industry folks, like people who are running like machine learning clusters, animation, that kind of stuff, they have specialized hardware and whatnot. I just installed CentOS streams like 30 minutes ago, and it looks like I did, and it looks like you're still using like kernel 4.18. So like for CentOS streams 8 for the like foreseeable lifetime, are we expecting to see like cutting over to a 5.0 kernel, or will it just continue to be like the 4.18 stuff with all the backports? Are people kind of worried about like having the rug pulled out under them for nothing? Yeah.
So one of the things about RHEL 8 and in turn all of the things based on it is something called application streams. Like that's related to CentOS streams. And what that introduced was basically inside of DNF, RPM, and inside your satellite, which is the management tooling for that, you can now basically have various what we call modules against a package, including the kernel. And so that means you can have like a slow dev and like cutting edge package, like of one thing. The RPM database will work out how to deal with that from system library perspective. And so we introduced things like Postgres. So on RHEL 8, you can install a Postgres 9.3, a Postgres 11, and a Postgres 12 version, and all you have to do is put the colon version you want underneath after the package name, and it will figure out all the things. The other thing of that, you can also split it up into submodules. So I can have a client version of Postgres 9. Whatever, and a server version of 12 because I'm developing against so all of that's resolved with application streams. And so likewise for questions around the kernel, you'll have like I can run the long-lived kernel, which is what I need for my stable production workload, or I can switch to the development stream inside that stream major release, and I'm good to go. So that was resolved ages ago. It was probably one of my favorite features of RHEL 8 that no one talks about, and it's pretty amazing because it resolves all those. But what about you move my kernel cheese? It just disappears.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I ran into that in Fedora when I was wondering, like, why isn't my GIMP updating to the? Oh, there's something in XCM about this. Oh, interesting.
That's going to be interesting. So the current plan is going to be basing it on Fedora 34.
I mean, as I said, forward-looking statement on that picture I showed you, but that gives you the idea of what's going on.
This is interesting to me because I know that's where Pipewire is going to get hammered on initially.
Yeah, and I mean, even in RHEL 8, Pipewire is front and foremost, right? Like it's used, causes a lot of pain for people that are running and want to, expecting X to work the way it used to back in 1987 with like screen session tunneling.
Right.
And if you happen to be just running Wayland in a VM somewhere, which is our main use case for RHEL 8 desktop, you don't have an X, you have a Wayland and you have a Pipewire. And so things don't work quite the same way in RHEL 8, and that confuses people. Easy workarounds, but you have to do a Google.
It's a new thing, right?
Frustrates people.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I'm just looking forward to that being pushed out in Fedora, and just to get more eyes on it, and especially with the work that's being done with the back end and Pipewire for just all the support for the jack and ALSA and Pulse Audio, which can just die in a fire. But I do want to talk to you about like workstations, man, because like applications like Autodesk, Maya, DaVinci Resolve, Fusion, they all require RHEL or CentOS, usually targeting like the 7 series. That's just the thing. With like CentOS Stream moving out, do you think that's going to become maybe just too much of a moving target for these applications, and we're just going to see them start focusing strictly on RHEL?
Yeah, I mean, desktop's a bit of a hard one, right? Like we've kind of made the decision strategically not to focus on workstation.
Mm-hmm.
So if RHEL 8 got rid of all the variants of RHEL, like you just have RHEL. There's no like desktop or workstation version like there was with 7 and previous releases. So it was just like we looked at what customers were doing, we looked at what vendors were doing, and we're not making anything from this. It's a giant cluster F to actually maintain, and it's just costing us money. So that was kind of a strategic decision to just move away from looking at that workstation use case. We have a couple of niches, like I said, the kind of VM environment developer experience stuff is certainly built in with RHEL 8 in mind, but beyond that, it's not. There's kind of niche customer-specific developments that we do. There's a bunch of air traffic control stations out there running RHEL workstations, and we support them.
Right.
But your average CG shop that's body shopping artists in and out is going to be rolling their own desktops anyway, so they're not paying us.
Yeah, what I'm kind of hitting at is like the software itself. I run into this. With like DaVinci Resolve, the only way I can get official support from the product that I spend several $100s on is to run either RHEL or CentOS. So I'm just kind of curious, is like not necessarily insight, but just kind of feeling. Do you think people are going to like just start focusing on RHEL, or are they going to move to something like Debian?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that's alarmed some of the community and some of the partners and vendors when they saw this, is because a lot of those OEM shops are developing, and even our own internal developer programs for some of those OEMs tend to target CentOS. Certainly, like big appliance makers, thinking of like the big box server manufacturers, they tend to develop on CentOS internally when they're doing certification metrics, and then do a final sprint towards a RHEL target for certification at the end. And that's worked okay-ish, but it actually causes a lot of problems as well. So we introduced a bunch of stuff with RHEL 8 that should have helped those orgs to try and like not have to do that, especially in the container space. Like you probably know we're like mad on OpenShift at the moment, and probably will continue to be. We released a free RHEL user space in the UBI. So this whole like, we develop on Ubuntu containers, or we develop on CentOS containers, this whole argument vanished overnight, right? Like you have free as in via RHEL runtimes that are certified, hardened, work with security profiles, work with what your security team have validated when RHEL everywhere else. Just use that. Don't use some random thing you pull off Docker Hub. So those are the kind of things that we targeted back at the RHEL release. One of the tragedies of the timing of this is that we already have a bunch of programs baking to help with those OEM development cases, to help with a bunch of community cases we're not picking up at the moment. So most like community program projects, or like a GitHub CI/CD pipeline sort of thing, they don't target us because it's too hard to do the sub management. They can't, you can get a free RHEL under the development sub program for free, personal use, but it's kind of limited. So we've got a bunch of stuff baking internally to address a heap of use cases. It should have been coincident with this announcement, right? But the legals behind that, because it's going to affect a lot of kind of, we have this kind of all or nothing clause, right? And that's a big revenue pool for us. And if we go and put a RHEL free into the market, and it's just like basically CentOS but actual RHEL, that will annoy a huge chunk of our shareholders, right. also our customers that are currently paying for things like dev environments. And so there's a bunch of like behind the scenes that we haven't quite finished baking, and it's just, again, just the tragedy of this timing. Like that's going to be first quarter next year, and so the need for a lot of those, do we need to target CentOS or RHEL, will just evaporate as well, because you'll have some sort of 100% free, you don't have to pay RHEL for specific use cases.
But I think it's important to point out, like if you're just getting because I was looking into it, pricing wise, just a license to run RHEL non-supported is under $200. I mean, it's not completely abstracted out of
there
the
exists
question.
the self-support sub.
Yeah.
We don't sell that in the APAC region. Like, we've been under instructions for several years not to sell self-support. It's there to support a couple of companies in North America, as far as I'm aware.
It's on the website. If you're in North America, you'll click on it.
It comes up occasionally. Basically, that's the stuff I can't talk too much about because it's still baking. We're still kind of doing this internal feedback loop, and there's a bunch of legals that really complicate it for some reasons.
Oh, that's cool, man. One thing I do want to ask, though, with compatibility, because I've run into this on this box. You might remember when I was playing around with CentOS, and that was because I was playing around with some, you were like, get off that, and here's some Red Hat. And I'm like, oh, I got to figure out how to get Cent up and running out of curiosity. Hardware drivers. That's another thing I've run into like official support with, especially with not so much Blackmagic, but with like Mellanox. So my question is it going to be kind of safe to assume, at least for the interim, that CentOS Stream is not going to change. If I got something that is currently requiring CentOS or a current version of RHEL to build it, I'm going to be able to get that up and installed on CentOS Stream, like capture cards, network cards, and
this hardware questions, again, one of the problem childs while CentOS Stream sort of came into existence. So RHEL 8 deprecated a heap of drivers, and then this is the one that I've seen decried in a few like large deployments where they're like, we've just started to migrate to, we've been planning for a year, we're about to migrate 100,000 CentOS servers to CentOS 8, and now this kind of puts us in a really awkward situation. So here's the thing. RHEL 8 deprecated a heap of hardware. RHEL 7 did as well, and we went down the path of, well, we won't remove the PCIDs, we won't remove the USB database stuff from the kernel. If it's in mainline, we'll allow it to run and put a big red kernel text saying, the vendor has disappeared, we know there's bugs, we know this disk driver is going to cause bit rot. And people still ran it and still came and complained to us and went, hey, I had this ancient system that wasn't in the support matrix I was been running RHEL 7 on, and now it's broke, fix it, Red Hat, so it's your fault. So that's been a problem for a while. And CentOS 8 is even bigger because people are running CentOS 8 with pretty much almost always with LRepo or the community module, and that automatically you're in a support envelope that doesn't exist, and so that's been a massive problem because again, you install CentOS 8 and you're likely to be able to get it installed without slapping in an OEM driver from some third party and knowing it. Whereas if you install Red Hat 8, it's just going to go, you've got no disk drives, and which is cool because then you know that, okay, I have to do some work in order to get my completely unsupported out of vendor that disappeared 10 years ago hard drive controller working. So that's been a big problem. And so the hardware supports something we work really hard on for our customers, right? Like we're working with manufacturers to make sure that when they release a new server variant, it works with the mainline kernel and with the RHEL kernel, and that we can kind of tick that box. And there's a huge risk matrix and a total cost of ownership around hardware selection. And this is where we can't solve that for the community. Like basically, if you're running old hardware or unsupported hardware or funky hardware, we can't supply support for that. We can't develop patches for it. And so it's very much you're on your own. So CentOS Streams can't fix that. That's always going to be a problem. There's always going to be someone with, Magic Dongle 9000 that is going to require some special hack to something that was 10 years old when it came out. That's just the reality. And people want to run that. That's cool. Instead of spending $50K on, Magi Dongle 10,000, which is actually in the certification and support matrix. Like that's your risk as an individual running in these organizations with these systems.
This is good to know, man. But I mean, everything you just said is like you should just assume that anyway, right? Like this is the safe bet. I know they don't, but
that's the problem. Yeah. That's why we've gone and it's a pain to remove it's a pain to create a delta between the mainline kernel.
You broke my workflow. Right? Damn you.
Right.
Like it's annoying for me. I have a bunch of Dell servers that have no HBAs now. I have to work around, and that's okay. They're now almost 12 years old hardware. So
I got one last question. So I got 100 or so CentOS 8 machines right now. I cut them over to streams. Does my data center catch fire? Does the ISO pop out of the unmount itself, go to my house and shoot my dog? What's the downside here? If right now I'm on CentOS 8, I say okay, well, I'm willing to eat the risks. I would rather have patches that are a little unstable but have like active fixes than wait 6 months for CentOS to catch up. What's my caveat emptor? What are my pain points I should look out for? Are there some sort of considerations that I should take before I go forward with this decision?
Today and for the next year or so, there'll be pretty much zero. You should just move to streams. There's nothing going to be substantially introduced in the 8 stream unless you go and poke the development module on a particular package. Or
if you swap out one of the application streams to something newer.
Yeah, but I mean, you can do that on standard CentOS anyway. So, it's. You could literally do this throughout a data center and no one would notice probably for 2 years. It's pretty much at the moment, at least, while there isn't like a huge runway to the current, you're not going to notice. And as I said, I think the majority of people that are upset are the ones that thought they were going to get supported out to 2029. For free. Somehow.
That's a hard lesson to learn. Yes, Wikipedia is edited by manatees. So are you able to talk about a little bit about like how long will streams be supported? Will development cut when 9 comes out? And then you have to move over to streams 9, or will you continue to start using that as like your gateway for maintenance patches for like RHEL 8?
So I'm just looking through our fact that I can talk to see if there's a window. What I can tell you, even without looking at the fact, so the main window for support for the standard RHEL major release is 5 years, and then you get another 5 years of various other support. So that's the 10 years life cycle. So I would imagine, so we're into year 2 of RHEL 8's existence at the moment. So you're probably going to get 3 years on streams of pretty much up-to-date patching. And then you'll get whatever effectively the maintenance patching cycle for RHEL beyond that will get, which is a little bit different to the first tier support. So that on that basis, that RHEL 8 will exist for that long. CentOS Streams 8 should exist for that long. But again, sort of early days, and I'm just checking to see if there's anything around CentOS Streams support lifecycle. Let's have a look. Lifecycle of RHEL. Yeah, this just
because I know a lot of people would have their heart rate drop by several beats per minute if from like the current near heart attack level, if they realize that, hey, streams is gonna have about equivalent levels of like support timeline. But if you can't answer that, then I don't want you to I don't want you to lie to the people.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is that you're unlikely to get anything other than the RHEL product patches for older releases. So if you for some reason let your CentOS streams get ancient and then not fast forward to the current, then you're going to have a hard time, I guess, because then you're not going to get the patches that RHEL's getting in the stream. That's probably the biggest risk. But you just need to go fast forward to the new version, and you'll be fine. But
like, what's the communication pipeline going to look like? Are we going to like hopefully RHEL learned the lesson about like being a little more considered with their announcements. Are we going to start having like we might start getting like news or rumblings a little bit earlier so that people have time to like prepare and like ask the questions?
The worst affected by this timing was internal RHEL employees. Like we got zero lead up internally, right? And that was again because it wasn't our decision. Like it was taken by the board of CentOS, which we have representation on, but they're not us. And I think a lot of people, like when you bought, CentOS back and bailed them out in 2014, you kind of ended up owning them. They always put us in a weird position, right? And I think this solves that as well, because that was always untenable. Like you can't own a community project and then have a commercial computer. It was always a problem. So this sort of solves for that as well. But yeah, you're right. The messaging sucked, and that we know that. The decision rationale was, we know there's people out there doing those big migrations. We need to let them know as soon as possible. Yeah, we've been working on this a while, right? Like, so from the internal CentOS people and RHEL have been working on this for over a year plus. Like I said, it was signaled quite a lot back in August this was happening, but middle of the pandemic we're never going to get heard, right? So there was a bunch of, like, the signaling was just kind of drowned out, and then this was just jarring for everyone who has been following it. But yeah, we're well aware that it doesn't look good. And we can't do much right now. It's the day before Christmas in New Zealand. So, and in the rest of the world, you've got another day of work, but, it's pretty much hands down at this point. So there's not much we can do at this point. We just have to wait till Q1. We are speeding up those announcements I was talking about, kind of alluding to before. I can't talk too much about them, but yeah, there is something in the pipeline to address a lot of those use cases that we traditionally have just kind of went, CentOS exists, it'll sort them out. That allows RHEL to kind of concentrate on our paying customers. So we realize with the demise of a long-term support CentOS, we need to address that. And I think that's what's coming.
Yeah. I think definitely maybe like communication as well, because like it's tricky because people on ZDNet or ZDNet or whatever will go and like give their hot takes, and a lot of that stuff gets ingested as fact. You said it yourself. Someone updated a support value on a wiki that wasn't even maintained by Red Hat to begin with, and people just accepted it as fact. So yeah, the communication thing is definitely something that needs to be addressed.
Man. But hey, at the end of the day, I seriously thank you for taking the time and talking about this, because, as to Jordan's point, man, there's a lot of misinformation and it's died down, but people are sitting around.
We have been putting stuff out, right? Like, it's just those shouty man on Reddit and /stock is not reading our blog announcements, right?
Right.
Like,
that's what I'm saying. It's like the signal's like, no, I need something to get angry about. Ooh, this will work just fine. But no, that's good. I mean,
clarified a lot of stuff.
Yes, I have a much better understanding of it, and that's brilliant. We got anything else we want to add, man? Where can people find you if they're feeling particularly stalky?
Voyeuristic.
Yeah, so you can always get a hold of me at my Red Hat email, or you can just join LWDW, because I'm generally hanging out in the Discords, at least for that show, in the morning on Wednesday your time, Thursday my time.
Yeah, man, how close is like Australia and New Zealand time zones? Do they overlap?
Well, Australia has like 3 time zones.
Which bit of Australia?
Yeah, that one.
Well, I mean, the way I like to put it is that it's like there's like 3,000 kilometers of ocean between us,
right,
which is roughly the distance between Georgia and Toronto. Plus, actually, it's probably longer. So yeah, so think about it that way. And then you start to get an idea why we get annoyed when we call Australians. It's like, no, there is ocean between us, quite a big one.
Oh, wait, come on! I live in Canada, the land of mostly empty space. So
I'm just saying, man. I mean, are you not a fan of like our maps without New Zealand?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to that. Like, someone's taken over the blog, and now it's got the bunch of weird, like, stick drawings. I don't know what's going on there.
I was going to say, maybe someone moved to New Zealand, and then they disappeared.
They're like that.
I think someone tried to monetize it instead of pushing their whatever. I was disappointed to see
you don't want to upset big Kiwi. They'll come after you.
All right, beautiful people. Again, thanks for getting up so early and helping us out. Like I said, I genuinely have a better understanding, and hopefully you at home do as well. Or, hey, maybe you're angry and you're watching this on YouTube later, and you're like, maybe we've sold out. I really wish I had like
send us some hate mail.
A Red Hat check. Be like, there we go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just Joel handing it off.
Yeah.
Like, there you go.
I think I might have some flashlight key rings I can
Oh yeah,
send
swag.
to you.
Yeah, and just straight up.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been great if we just had t-shirts and everything.
But it's probably easier for me to get someone in Raleigh to send it to rather than me shipping it from Wellington.
So Joel, I literally am right across the street from the Red Hat Toronto office. So
cool. Yeah,
I can see it from my window right now. So
you're okay locked down there. You can go into work and stuff.
I can work from home
on restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is if you need a channel for swag, I'm right there.
Yeah.
Hit me up.
We're at the bottom of the world, man. Like, I'm the receiver of swag. Like, I don't send swag out.
All right, seems fair. That was brilliant. Back to you, future Vin. Thanks, past Vin. All right, that was interesting. Extra thanks again to Joel, man. He was able to spend over 30 minutes with us, and we had tried to keep the questions not too far in the weeds. Jordan and I discussed that. It's like, how technical do we want to get? We got there for the most part, and I tried to cover some of the desktop stuff that's going on, and that was very informative. So extra thanks again to Joel, especially for getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he wore headphones just for us.
Nice, Joel. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really sweet. So if you like what we do, you like the cut of our jib and holiday times and all that, and we get some Christmas presents, don't worry about that. You just head over to patreon.com/Linux Gamecast. That's how we do the hosting, bandwidth, all the fun stuff that we do with the show. We got a merch store just over linuxgamecast.com. Click on the support button. We got t-shirts, stickers, and all kind of things to annoy your friends and family that will not show up until well after Festivus. It's too late now. And that's about it. If you join us on Patreon, you get access to our Discord. We got an extra show we do each week just for patrons. We're going to be doing a Patreon-only stream tomorrow with Trine. We're going to Trine again. The three Yahoos will be slamming our heads together and attempting to communicate poorly for the, 43rd. We've beat Trine 1, 2, and 3 together, and we're just getting into 4, man. So, if you're looking for something to do tomorrow, there's not a time set for that, but we're going to assume somewhere between 5 and 7 Eastern, somewhere in there. So, nice. There is that. Keep being awesome. Stick around for your name in the credits. And let's get in to what everyone enjoys. Pumpkin. Man, I wouldn't even want to eat that. That's disgusting.
That one looks nice.
I don't digest cardboard very well, but maybe some people do.
It's mostly sugar. Don't worry.
Yeah, mostly sugar. With a little flavoring.
It's a hat full of pies.
It is. It's a very overly designed hat because it includes a projector and a massive heatsink because it includes a projector. Yes. That's exactly what it is. It is a teeny tiny little projector.
Pedro, that clearly can't be a projector. Where's the bulb?
LED.
Incorrect.
I don't know.
It's okay. I'm sorry. It's to interrupt to somebody who read the article. Yes, it's an easy way to blind yourself.
I didn't read it all the way through.
Clearly. I was trying to.
I didn't go down into the weeds.
I was genuinely just trying to set you up for the joke, and it was like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know, magic.
But so it is teeny tiny.
Tell me about it, Jill.
Yeah, so it's laser focused, literally uses lasers, and it has no bulb, is fanless and low, and is very low powered, and that makes for a great combination. And what was interesting on the GitHub page is they had a Nebra Anybeam monster ball. And I'm wondering, nothing says stability more than being contained in a ball. How is that? How does that work? So I guess it probably has a foot that it sits on so that it doesn't roll away. It's down just a little bit.
Look at it.
Not there it is.
No, that's brilliant. You see, I wish I'd had something like that. It's a lot. one of the first smartphones I ever got was I think it was a BlackBerry Curve. This is before Android came out. And it was me protesting. I hate carrying around a mobile.
With the routed top and
it
bottom.
was the most expensive option they had. I'm like, you're going to pay dearly for me to have to carry this around. And I found that you could set a timer on the camera, which, again, it had a camera. I'm like, what? So it was really handy because if you could set the time, I got really good at distance to like throw it at somebody. And it would snap. And then they would get upset that you threw your mobile at them. And we're talking about friends, of course. And so what do? They throw it back to you. I'm like, thanks. Got my picture. And yeah, worked out quite brilliant. So a ball like that would have been less, you know, might not have hurt people. This is interesting, though. The two things I see against it, $267 for the Pi hats. So,
yeah,
you're looking at, but the thing that didn't really strike me is, I mean, it's 720p.
That's kind of normal for the Pico projectors.
Yeah.
Kind of normal.
Even like if you want to get anywhere near that price with a secondhand projector, you're looking at a 720p projector anyway. Even the big external ones.
What is it, Pedro?
They're not cheap.
Is it a projector for ants?
No, it's maybe it's the way that your eyes perceive the image being projected. 720p on a wall looks a lot better than 720p on a 23-inch screen.
Exactly.
A lot better.
I'm not going to buy this because all I do is blind myself with it, but...
Yeah.
Laser.
Well, this was an amazing, it was a Kickstarter project. And it did very well. So now they're making them.
That's good to see. And they do have a GitHub page. It is available, but...
we can all geek out about this.
101. Now, I just want to make sure that we're clear. This is the Pi gate. A gate of pi. You get it? And there's no way it came from that movie or a syndicated series based on the movie. Nay.
No, sorry, Bob.
No way. Also, it's a bunch of 3D printing and a lot of work went into this to basically make your own Stargate and model miniature. And I just wanted to give this a plug. I'm like, this, I just love seeing that. Look at that. The DHD even works. Yes, I know it's a DHD. Get off my nerd lawn. Okay.
Yeah. And all the buttons work too and light up. They're so cool.
So it's like that. And this is from the Magpie, but I went digging around. I'm like, yes, look at it. You really want to go back and check the video out for this one. But look at that. Fully functional, interactive, 3D printed Stargate and DHDC. I knew it was a nerd thing. I didn't even look at that. That's cool. I like that. I wonder if you can lock the 7th chevron. Or was it the 9th? I don't know. My nerd cred doesn't go that deep without.
All I know is that was as far as they'd ever gotten before what's his face showed up.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Watch it. Check it out. Cutting off.
Yeah, it even has a nice little speaker in it and it does all the sounds and everything. Pretty cool.
I just wanted to scream like Jaffa Pie and possibly Indeed occasionally, but outside of that, I didn't do it.
You hit the button, it goes Indeed.
Right?
And thank you, Arthur, for that. He had posted that like quite a few weeks ago. So we're finally getting around to it.
All right. So thank you and everyone else watching for sticking around for this extended Festivus edition of Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays. We will be back next week when I think most of the Nightmare Fuel will be, no. We still got one more week in December of day.
Yes.
So we'll see you then. But until then, we got to get out of here, man. And thanks for sticking around again for this. I'm trying to do the math. Hour, 30-minute long episode.
Oh, it's going to be a long one.
Well,
it's everyone's Christmas gift, everyone's holiday gift.
Anyway, I got to pull up the music and we got to roll some credits. Allegedly.
I'd say about an hour and 10.
Yeah, there we go.
Pedro, there's like an extra 40 minutes I got to cut into this, right?
Yeah. Wait, are you saying we've been going on for 50 minutes?
Aww. So happy holidays, everyone, and thanks again to our wonderful executive producers and our producers. Without you, this is your holiday gift to us. LWW.
This very show was brought to you by you.
Yeah.
It's your fault. Don't come complaining. It was your fault. You did it to yourselves. No, sorry.
LGC cares. Hail Santa.
Bye.
Aw. Thank you, Jonesy320 and Artherin, as always.